Hello class, this is lesson 1.1, solving equations. In this lesson the goal is to explain and justify each step in solving a multi-step linear equation. So we're going to be going through a couple of properties of how to solve for a variable x. And what that is called is the solution of an equation. So a solution of an equation is a value for a variable that makes the equation true. The four properties that we're going to be talking about in this lesson are the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division property. And these properties pretty much go like this. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, so for the addition property, if we add c to a, then we also have to add c to b. For the subtraction property, if you subtract c from a, then you have to subtract c from b. And for the multiplication, if we multiply c to a, we also have to multiply c to b. And for division, if we divide by c on this side, we also have to divide by c on this side. Now, we're using these properties to get the variable isolated on one side of the equation. So if you look at this equation, a equals b, this is one entire side, and this is another side. What we want to do is we want to get the variable alone on this side and move everything to the other side by using these properties. So let's look at the first example. And with these examples, we also want to justify our step for each thing that we do. So for example A, we have 4x minus 2 equals 6. What I want to do is I want to isolate x. And what I need to do is I need to move the negative 2 to the other side of the equation. And to do that, I need to do the opposite or the inverse function. To move a negative, we have to use a positive. So we're going to be using the addition property. We're going to be adding 2 here and adding 2 here. A negative 2 and a positive 2 cancel each other out, and you're left with 4x is equal to 8. So to remove the 4, 4 is being multiplied to x. That's why they're connected like this. This is 4 times x. The inverse operation of multiplication is division. So the opposite of multiplying by something is to divide by something. We could use the division property of equality to move the 4 to the other side. So you would divide both sides by 4, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. So x is equal to 2. So right here I use the addition property. And here I use the division property. Okay, let's look at example B. I have 1/2 z plus 4 equals 10. So how do we move a positive 4 to the other side of the equation? We have to do the subtraction property. We have to subtract 4 to both sides, and that eliminates the 4 on the left side. We drop everything down, so we have 1/2 z is equal to 10 minus 4 is 6. Now I want to talk about what this 1/2 z means. Now 1/2 z, it pretty much means z divided by 2. Or I could just rewrite this as z over 2 is equal to 6. So z is being divided by 2, and to move this 2 to the other side, we have to do the inverse operation. The inverse operation of division is multiplication. So we need to multiply both sides by 2. So this 2 and the denominator 2 will cancel each other out. We have 6 times 2, so z is equal to 12. Now let's talk about the properties that we use in this problem. So we use the subtraction property. And then we use the multiplication property. One thing to note is that you always want to do addition and subtraction properties before doing any division multiplication properties. So that's why for problem number 1, I wanted to add 2 to both sides instead of dividing by 4 first, because it's easier to separate addition and subtraction before separating multiplication or division. Okay, so now that we have finished those 2 examples, on the next page we have an example that has been completed for you, and it kind of just shows the steps. 4x plus 5 equals 21. You see how they subtracted 5 and how they divided by 4, and you got your answer. When they say justify each step, what they want you to do is explain which property was used in solving these problems. So if you want to pause the video here and try problem number 2 and 3 on your own, and then press play to look at the solution, you can. But I'm just going to go ahead and go through these problems. So for the first problem, number 2, I have negative 5x plus 10 equals 50. So what I need to do first is I need to move the positive 10 to the other side by subtracting 10 to both sides. And that will cancel out those 10s right there. I'm left with negative 5x equals 40. And then I want to divide both sides by negative 5. Now the reason why I'm dividing by negative 5 is because the opposite of multiplying by negative 5, because this is what negative 5x means, negative 5 times x, the opposite of multiplying by negative 5 is to divide by negative 5. So a lot of people get confused. Sometimes they divide by positive 5 because they think opposite sign. But we're not talking about opposites. We're talking about inverse operations. The inverse of a multiplication is a division, and you're dividing the number that you're multiplying by, if that makes sense. Or just to keep it simple, just always divide by the number in front of x, including the sign. So these cancel out. A positive 40 divided by a negative 5, if you remember your integers, a positive divided by a negative is a negative, and 40 divided by 5 is 8. So the properties that we use subtraction and we use division. Okay, for problem number 3, I have 1/3 x minus 9 equals 3. So what I need to do is I need to add 9 to both sides. So that's going to be my first step. Add 9 here, add 9 here, and I get 1/3x is equal to 12. Then I want to multiply. So remember that 1/3 x means x divided by 3 equals 12. And the opposite of dividing is to multiply both sides by 3. So this 3 and this 3 cancel each other out. 12 times 3 is 36. So x is equal to 36. And the properties that we used were addition and multiplication. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of this lesson, and we're going to go through a couple of examples. So we are still solving for the variable. Now these equations are written a little bit different, but we are using the same steps. So for problem number C, or problem C, we have 35 minus 2m equals 65, and I want to get m alone on this side. I want to move the 35 to this side, and I want to move the negative 2 to the right side. So we start with addition and subtraction properties of equality, and we will start with the positive 35. So this is positive 35, even though you don't see a plus sign, you say it's positive because there's no negative sign. To move a positive 35 to the other side, we have to subtract 35 to both sides. Okay, and these are going to cancel out. 65 minus 35 is 30, so you're left with negative 2m is equal to 30. Next, we're going to use a division property to divide both sides by negative 2. And m is equal to negative 15. Because again, a positive 30 divided by a negative 2 is a negative 15. Okay, now for D, we have 14 equals negative r over 4 plus 4. Now, let's look at D and C. Let's compare these two equations. What's different? While in C, m is on the left side of the equation, and on D, the variable r is on the right side of the equation. But we use the same properties. So we want to isolate the variable in whatever side the variable is in. For problem D, the variable is on the right side. So we're going to get this r alone on this side, meaning we have to move a 4 to the other side and this 4 to the other side. Okay, so our first step is to subtract 4 to both sides. So minus 4 minus 4. 14 minus 4 is 10. And then the positive 4 and negative 4 cancel each other out. Okay, so if you look at this part here, to separate the negative and the 4, we have to do the opposite operation, or the inverse operation. The inverse of dividing by a negative 4 is to multiply by negative 4. So multiply both sides by negative 4, and you get negative 40 equals r. And we could always rewrite our final answer to look like this. R equals negative 40. So these mean the same thing. Negative 40 equals r, and r equals negative 40. We could write it either way. Okay, so if you want to pause the video here and try problem number 4 and 5 on your own, and then press play to see the solution. So for number 4, we have 25 minus 3m equals 40. You're going to subtract 25 to both sides, and you have negative 3m is equal to 15. And then you want to divide both sides by negative 3. And then you have m is equal to negative 5. So what properties did we use for problem number 4? We use subtraction and we use division. Okay, for number 5, we need to move the negative 3 to the left side. So we're going to add 3 here and add 3 to the 6. 6 plus 3 is 9. So we have 9 is equal to negative x over 5. We're going to multiply both sides by negative 5. And x, or negative 45, is equal to x. Properties that we use addition, and then we use multiplication. Okay, problem number 6. So this is a word problem. So let's read it and let's try to find the solution. Jessica wants to buy 4 new tires for her truck. She has a budget of $500 and she knows there is a flat installation fee of $60. To figure out how much one tire would cost, Jessica used the equation shown where T is the cost for each tire. So the equation is 500 is equal to 60 plus 4T. 500 is because she has $500. 60 is the installation fee, and she needs 4 tires for her car. T stands for tires. So what we want to do is we want to select 2 of the following steps and reasons that can be used to solve this equation. So what would our first step be? Step 1 is to subtract 60 from both sides of the equation to determine how much money is left for 4 tires. Step 1 is to divide both sides by the equation by 4 to determine the cost for each of the 4 tires before paying for the installation fee. So remember that we always want to use addition and subtraction properties of equality before using multiplication and division properties of equality. So step 1 has to be to subtract 60 to both sides. Now, step 2 is to divide both sides by the equation 4 to determine the cost of each tire. Or step 2 is to add 60. Now, we know we're not going to be adding 60 to step 2, so we have to divide both sides by 4. Now, the format for these questions, for this question is a lot like how the questions are going to be on the test. So you're going to have to analyze an equation and select what are the correct steps to solving that equation. Okay, so that pretty much completes the first lesson, lesson 1.1, and your homework is to complete page 18, so lesson 1.1 homework, and page 19, and end at lesson 1.1 checkpoint. And then for your homework, make sure you show all your work. Make sure if you need to attach any scratch paper, attach it to the file and try your best. Thank you. Bye.